billion in direct cash incentives to both the company for onshoring manufacturing operations in the amount of $600 million, as well as an investment in the local community for infrastructure in the amount of $691 million. The onshoring incentive grant is going to help offset costs for the company, given that really building a semiconductor manufacturing plant in the United States costs as much as 20 to 30% more compared to those built in Asian markets. The grant will consist of $300 million per fab, and they're going to build 2 fabs that are planned as part of this initial phase to be completed by 2025. This incentive is performance-based. So if Intel fails to deliver on their commitments, which we're very confident that they won't, they will not be eligible for the grant. And so we would have a discussion then, of course, of dispersed funds that would be clawed back. The really exciting part, which as a former mayor, I can't help glowing about, is the $691 million that we will invest in local infrastructure. The state is making about $101.2 million in investment for water and wastewater capacity upgrades, $290 million in road work, as well as $300 million for a state-of-the-art water reclamation facility. These investments will not only ensure that this project is successful here, but will also be supporting the region by increasing local infrastructure to support future growth. So putting another way, for every 6 cents the state invests in these direct cash incentives, Intel invests at least $1, or a 16-to-1 return. So the next slide, please. Intel is also going to be able to benefit from an expanded job creation tax credit, or JCTC, as part of the mega legislation that was passed earlier. The 30-year JCTC is performance-based and has an estimated value of about $650 million. Intel will provide an annual report that details the project's status as it relates to job creation, and information in that annual report includes data points such as the number of full-time employees, payroll, income tax revenue, and other information. So we really look at these in 3 buckets: direct investment in the company, a direct cash investment in the community to support the growth, and then creation tax credit. So why did the state offer these incentives? Ohio has been presented with a historic opportunity to take the lead in reestablishing America's dominance as the maker of semiconductors, or chips. In 1990, the US was a world leader in chip production, where we dominated nearly 40% of the world's production capacity. In 2020, our nation's share fell to only 12% and is projected to slide to just 10% by 2030 if the United States doesn't act. Combine those factors with what has transpired in the world over the last couple of years, decades of offshoring the manufacturing of chips, a foundational technology that makes modern life possible, to Asia, which has stagnated innovation and left our nation vulnerable to the supply chain disruptions. And this last slide here, please. We're going to boost chip production in the United States, which will bolster America's national security and industrial competitiveness, as well as to help address an issue that has crippled major sectors of our national and state economy and harmed businesses and consumers. Intel's technology, which is built in America, is essential to key Ohio sectors, including the automotive, advanced mobility, aerospace and aviation, consumer goods, our data centers, defense, healthcare, and technology. And these industry segments are crucial to our state and regional economies. And on top of all that, this deal will establish Ohio as the world center for modern manufacturing. And it's going to create an infrastructure for semiconductor manufacturing that other companies can leverage. It's a win-win for Ohio, for Intel, and for America. So in closing, as Governor DeWine has said, our goal every single day is to make Ohio the land of opportunity. And we're working to bring more advanced manufacturing jobs to our state, to make Ohio a national leader in innovation and technology. And as we have all seen over the past few years, we've got to make more products here in America, and we want to make them here in Ohio so that we're no longer held hostage by disruptions in the global supply chain. When you look at what we're giving Intel and compare it to what we're getting in return, some may wonder if it's worth it, and the answer is yes. So thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Hi, Director. Your first question today is from Dan DeRose at WOIO.
Director, thank you very much for the time today and getting us these numbers and facts. Can you answer from your perspective, how much of an influence did these tax credits, the $1.3 billion, how much did this work in favor of Ohio? Is it something that Intel said, without this, we wouldn't be here?
Well, thank you very much for the question. You know, I think it's certainly a piece of the overall puzzle, but I would say undoubtedly that when you take a look at what Ohio has to offer in terms of our talent, at the business climate, at what the leadership has been able to do for this state, it's certainly a piece of what was part of Intel's consideration. But the availability of what we have here in terms of the land and just what Team Ohio was able to put together for this project and this opportunity, I think all of those things were in consideration for the final decision for Intel.
Next question from Joe Ingles, Ohio Public Radio.
Hello, Director. Thank you for doing this. One of the things that we're hearing right now from local leaders in various sectors is that they feel they need to be at the table. When you make these improvements, the farmers, for instance, they say they need to be there because the roads and the things you're going to do with drainage affects them. Businesses, other businesses say they need to be there. And housing folks say they need to be there. What are you doing to make sure that when you make these investments, they are actually investments that work not just for Intel, but for the entire community?
Well, that's a great question. And I would say that we are engaging all sorts of stakeholders, not only locally within the immediate area of where this project is being constructed, but within the entire region. And I would say that that's absolutely right. A project of this magnitude has impacts not only within the specific site, but within the entire state. And so those conversations are going to continue to happen not only at the local level, but we're going to do everything that we can to be supportive as these investments continue to develop.
Your next question is from Tom Bosco at WSYX.
Hi, Director Mahalik. Can you tell us and give us an idea of how this works? I mean, does the state put together a package and send it to them, and then they send back things they want? And was there anything they wanted that the state kind of said, no, we can't do that. That's a deal breaker?
Well, I can say that it's the term process is definitely a great way to describe this. I would say that it's going to continue to be a process and that there will be lots of folks involved. we will continue to have conversations with the company, and we look forward to continuing to engage with them. And these things from an economic development standpoint are require a formula. And I think Ohio has that formula right in working with both the public and the private sector. And it says a lot about why Ohio won a project of this magnitude. And in order to continue to win and to continue to bring projects like this to fruition, that process will continue to be followed. And I'm looking forward to getting it done.
Can I just follow up? Was there anything they wanted that the state was unwilling to give them?
Not that I can recall, no.
Next question from Jamie Ostroff, WCMH.
Hi, I'd actually like to expand on Tom's question a little bit because this obviously was a very competitive process that unfolded over several months. I would like to know what the state's first offer to Intel was.
We can, certainly, have the team, discuss those details to the extent necessary. The team at Jobs Ohio was obviously involved in those conversations, and to the extent that they are willing to provide those information, those details to you, we'd be happy to have you communicate with them.
Next question from Jeremy Pelzer, Cleveland.com.
Hi, Director. Of the incentives that you've outlined here, what's already been approved and what still needs to be approved? And for those incentives that still need to be approved, what's the process needed to approve them? Like, does this have to go through controlling board, the tax credit authority, et cetera?
Great question. So the tax credit authority will obviously have, say over the job creation tax credit. And in terms of the direct cash incentives, we'll be working with our partners in the legislature to bring those to fruition.
Next question from Carrie Ghost, Columbus Business First.
Thanks so much. Is Jobs Ohio in addition, or is any of this coming from Jobs Ohio? And do you have a context of historically, what was the biggest incentive Ohio ever offered before?
Well, I can tell you that Ohio put together a package that includes incentives from the state and Jobs Ohio and the locals. It was a Team Ohio approach. I'm here today to speak to the state incentives. Our partners, as part of the other portions of the team, can speak to their contributions. And in terms of the magnitude of these incentives, I can certainly tell you that I'm fairly certain that this is the largest economic development deal in Ohio's history. So I would say that it probably reasons to believe that this is probably the largest incentive package in Ohio's history in order to land something of this magnitude.
Next question from Mark Williams, Columbus Dispatch.
Thanks, Director. The notion that we could potentially looking at something even bigger from Intel I would assume mean that the state would be willing to step up this offer, assuming that Intel goes through with its plans to eventually have 8 fabs at that site.
I would say that we would love to continue conversations with Intel, and if they were willing to continue to consider investment at the site, we would love to have continued conversations with them about continued investment.
Next question from Nick Evans, Ohio Capital Journal.
Hi, Director. I just want to make sure that I understand this clearly in terms of the incentives that are being offered. You laid out the $1.3 billion that are direct, and then the 650 odd that'll be over the next 30 years. But also, I'm hearing about incentives from Jobs Ohio and from the locals. So, I mean, what is the sum total of incentives being offered? Is it just that two-ish billion that you've laid out today, or is there more money that was offered to Intel?
So I can speak directly to what the state has put on the table relative to the direct cash and then the job creation tax credit. But I can't speak to what Jobs Ohio has offered, nor what the locals have placed on the table.
So it's safe to say there's more money out there. Is that fair?
I would say to you that this, in order to land a deal of this magnitude, it took a Team Ohio effort, and I'm only here today to speak about the state's portion.
Next question is from Kiana Dichez from WBNS.
Good afternoon, Director. I just wanted to know, you talked about the employment benchmarks. Are there any kind of environmental benchmarks that the company needs to hit each year? And also, how much did Intel pay per acre?
I am unfamiliar with the price per acre. I would point you to the company, and in terms of environmental benchmarks, I'm unsure, but we could have somebody talk to you offline about that.
Michael Tobin from Bloomberg News.
Hi, I had a question about if the state is considering issuing municipal bonds to help cover some of the development costs, and if Intel had any conversations with the state about which other neighboring states were in competition for the site.
I am unsure about municipal bonds for the development costs, and in terms of what other states we would be in competition with, I would say probably the usual suspects, but I can't speculate on that.
Just to follow up to that, can you elaborate on the usual suspects?
I would say in terms of the general site selection magazine folks, Texas, North Carolina, and the like.
Next question is from Paul Gluckman, Consumer Electronics Daily.
Thank you for taking my question. I guess from a basic point of view, is there a physical contract that's been signed? When was it signed? And with regards to the 130,000 annual salary that you mentioned, is that an average with caps and base levels? In other words, is Intel required to meet certain benchmarks with regard to that 130,000? Thank you.
I'm not sure I could pick up the question there. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Can you hear me?
Choppy. No, it's kind of choppy.
Okay, I'll get back in the queue.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Next question, Dustin Ensinger from Gongwer.
Hi, I was wondering if the legislature will need to approve the full $1.2 billion in direct cash incentives, or was some of that already made available? But how will that work?
We look forward to working with our friends and partners in the legislature on the incentive package.
And Laura Bischoff from Gannett.
Hi, Director. I think I'd probably speak for everybody on this call when I say, could we please get copies of the grant agreements and infrastructure agreements as soon as possible?
Yes, of course, Laura. There are. You absolutely can get copies of the grant agreements and infrastructure agreements as soon as possible.
And we can try to circle back to Paul Gluckman with Consumer Electronics Daily.
Thank you. I'll give it another try. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. My question is about the benchmarks that Intel needs to meet for maximum tax credits. on the job front. And the quotation of 130,000 annual salary, is that an average with caps top and bottom? In other words, what does Intel need to do to meet that average, if in fact that is an average? Thank you.
So we'd be happy to get you details related to the necessary documentation related to the job creation tax credit. We'll have the team reach out to you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was your last question. Thank you, Director. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. This certainly isn't the last time we will be discussing with you this project, and we look forward to talking with you more as the details unfold. Have a great weekend.